acquisition. Okay, so some basics on Assent. Assent is different than consent. Consent is like informed consent at the doctor's office. They say, "Hey, Matt, I'm going to, give you this strep test. These are the risks associated with it. These are the benefits associated with it. Do you understand everything? Yes, sign this paper." And then for a certain period of time, depending on what that paper says, I have given my single yes that is necessary for the doctor to then turn around and apply that test. Consent, with a C, is singular. It is one instance following understanding that indicates continuous acceptance of the intervention that was agreed to. Assent is different. An assent means a continuous dynamic agreement to the continued intervention process. So in that same example for a doctor's office, and if they're looking for assent with an A for that same strep test, well, that would be measured by me not turning away my head when the little stick is coming through. It would be not pushing the strep test away. It would be not, after they get the strep test, slapping the test out of their hand and saying, "I don't want you to send that to the doctor." All of these other things that are happening prevent or indicate that my assent has been withdrawn. My agreement to continue to the next step, my agreement to have the intervention applied to me has been removed. Assent is different than just escape maintain behavior. Escape maintain behavior does often look like assent withdrawal, but assent withdrawal can also appear in a variety of other ways and simply indicate not a function, not some complex behavioral contingency. It simply means that the current ongoing environment is something worth moving away from. Right? It's something, not that it's aversive, that it's worth moving away from. We're going to talk about that later on down the line as we think through responses. But ultimately, the reason why we talk about assent instead of consent in ABA is actually not just because in a legalese term, many of the clients we work with would not be legally able or allowed to give consent. While it's true that these terms are legal terms that apply to court cases and things like that, and assent is looked at when consent is not available. What's valuable about ABA when we look at assent is because our session lengths tend to be significantly longer than our counterparts, mental health therapists, SLPs, OTs. A 5-year-old saying, "Yeah, let's get started with therapy" at 8 a.m. is not the same 5-year-old who says, "Yeah, let's do the 9th DTT task at 3:30 p.m. with no nap." My 5-year-old is not the same 5-year-old at 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So the way our sessions are structured and the way we inherently work with our clients, there has to be some continued measurement of agreement because our stuff is so long and so dynamic. My big, talking point, frustration, reason for the CEU is because, as I shared with you, I've been doing CEUs in the online space for 4 years now, almost more than that now. I just renewed my ACE provider application. I've given over 5,000 CEUs out, not a small amount in the assent and compassionate care world, probably 3,000 plus. I know, this is the stuff I live and breathe. It's how I practice, etc. But when I started my marketing agency, I got to talk to ABA people all around the country. And the most common thing, I would say 8 out of 10 times when I asked about assent-based care at their clinic, they said the same thing. "Oh, just saying yes to everybody? No, we don't do that. They're kids. Of course they have to go through our things. I wouldn't just say yes if my kid wanted to stay home from school and eat Snickers bars." And that mindset, that thought process of this just flat out misunderstanding of the way assent is our fault. It's the people who use assent-based care and who talk about it all the time not demonstrating the full complexity of Assent-based care, and especially not talking about how it's a lot more than just saying yes to everything or never moving forward in an intervention. It is a sophisticated, constantly changing, shaping intervention that requires a crap load of work. And I won't go on this soapbox too long, but you know what's easy? You know what's easy as a BCBA? Telling your RBT to go do escape extinction for 3 weeks until the behavior stops. You know what's hard as a BCBA? Being involved in every single session in close communication with your RBT and knowing exactly when a behavior spikes so you can change the intervention in the moment so we can reduce behavior, modify our shaping protocols, and then rewrite the treatment plan so that now we shape a little bit slower. Like, that is hard. And that changes all the things that happen after the behavior is what we're talking about today. Give me a second. I'm going to try and maneuver this so I can actually look at my screen as we go. Okay. Yep, and now I can draw on the screen too. Perfect. If you guys have been in any of my boot camps, you're probably used to my drawing. I apologize if it's giving you some PTSD, but I'm a big fan. Okay, so overall, assent does not equal consent. It's more dynamic and thus more useful for ABA. Assent is not just backing off when you meet resistance. There's a lot more to it, and there's sophisticated modifications as we go. Somebody said, I do my best to model assent in person within the moment with an RBT or a supervisee. Absolutely. One of the most powerful things that I demonstrate to my supervisees is reading their body language. It sounds so simple, but if you are talking to your supervisee and you're reading discomfort, you're reading confusion, calling it out, and then noting, hey, I could tell that you had a question because of this, this, and this, getting them used to this concept of watching the other person and changing your behavior, that teaches them precursors in response class management. So big fan, definitely agree. So this is my, this is essentially, if I were to boil down the big misunderstanding, it comes to this. The misunderstanding of assent tells us that first we set up the environment, then we present the trial, then we see the client have assent withdrawal, the clinician backs off, and then we repeat and do the same thing over again after 5 minutes of calm or 10 minutes of HRE or even the next session, right? But this loop where we start with setting up the environment and then we end with backing off and trying again, when it just repeats over and over again, nothing actually changes. If we get 30%, 50% assent withdrawal, then we're going to continue with that 30 to 50% assent withdrawal. Now, what sometimes happens, and this is, almost worse, is let's say that you actually are getting more assent provision as you go on. Essentially, the client is assenting more and more to this intervention as we go. Maybe it took a week, maybe it takes 3 weeks, maybe it takes 2 months. But you're starting to see some progress. What's actually happening is you're accidentally teaching toleration skills. By accident, you're teaching the learner that this hard thing is happening, then it's going to go away, then we can move on and try something else. And that toleration skills that you're accidentally teaching are working to do the job. Give more toleration skills, let them handle harder things, and then move them on and get to the next goal. However, imagine if instead of teaching coping skills or toleration skills accidentally, you taught it purposefully. And that's what proper assent-based care is. That's when there is a change in the environment following assent withdrawal, and then we repeat with a new environment, continue on, track assent withdrawal. Once assent withdrawal occurs a certain amount of times, we change again and go back and forth. Now, when I say environment, what I mean here is the overall intervention. Oftentimes that is the environment. We're presenting a different task, we're having a different background, we're doing X, we're doing Y, but you can think of it just as the intervention. If the intervention is present these tasks at this arrangement in this setup and reinforce at this rate of reinforcement, that is the thing that has to change when we're getting continued